There are moments in a man's life when silence finally gives way to something more powerful, the truth. For Tom Selleck, that moment has arrived at the age of 80, after decades of carefully guarding his private thoughts, of deflecting personal questions with his trademark humor and easy charm. Selleck has decided that the time has come to speak openly, honestly, and from the heart about a man who changed the entire course of his life. That man is James Garner, actor, icon, and the closest thing to a real-life hero that Tom Selleck ever had. To understand why this moment matters so deeply, you have to understand who Tom Selleck truly is beneath the mustache, beyond the fame, and far removed from the glittering surface of Hollywood stardom. Born on January 29, 1945, in Detroit, Michigan, Selleck grew up in a working-class household that eventually relocated to Sherman Oaks, California. He was not a boy who dreamed of movie sets and television cameras. He was a boy who loved sports, competition, and the outdoors. He attended the University of Southern California on a basketball scholarship, fully expecting that athletics would define his future. But life, as it so often does, had a completely different plan waiting just around the corner. A drama coach at USC spotted something in the tall, broad-shouldered young man that Selleck himself had not yet recognized: a natural magnetism, a quiet confidence, and an ability to hold a room without even trying. With some gentle encouragement and a nudge toward acting classes, Selleck began a journey he never anticipated. Early commercial work, including appearances in well-known advertisements of the 1960s, gave him a taste of the camera. And the camera, it turned out, loved him back without hesitation. The path to stardom was not paved overnight. Through the 1960s and 1970s, Selleck worked steadily, picking up guest appearances on television shows, learning the craft from the inside out, and building the kind of quiet resilience that only comes from years of persistence in a brutally competitive industry. Hollywood is not a place that rewards patience easily, and there were many years when Selleck had every reason to give up, but he didn't. He kept showing up, kept refining his skills, and kept believing that something big was on the horizon. One of the great near misses of cinema history nearly changed everything. Tom Selleck was famously the preferred choice of filmmakers for the role of Indiana Jones in Raiders of the Lost Arkansas. He had passed every test, impressed every decision-maker, and stood on the verge of stepping into what would become one of the most iconic roles in movie history. But his commitment to a television project that would ultimately define his career made it impossible to accept. It was a heartbreaking moment at the time, though history would prove that the role Selleck was destined to play was already waiting for him on the sun-drenched shores of Hawaii. In 1980, Tom Selleck became Thomas Magnum, the wisecracking, Ferrari-driving, Hawaiian shirt-wearing private investigator at the center of CBS's Magnum PI. The show was an immediate sensation. Audiences fell completely in love with the character. Charming but not shallow, tough but not cold, funny but never foolish. For 8 seasons, Selleck delivered one of the most consistently entertaining performances in the history of American television. He won an Emmy Award. He won a Golden Globe. He became one of the most recognizable faces on the planet. But even as all that success was unfolding, there was something happening off-screen that would matter far more to Selleck in the long run. He was developing a friendship with James Garner that would shape the rest of his life. To fully appreciate what James Garner meant to Tom Selleck, you need to understand what Garner represented to an entire generation of Americans, and specifically what he meant to a young man growing up in Southern California during the 1950s. James Garner was not a traditional Hollywood hero. He didn't rely on brooding intensity or manufactured toughness. Instead, he brought something rarer and more valuable to the screen, a genuine, relaxed, effortlessly cool humanity that made every character he played feel completely real. Selleck watched Garner on Maverick as a young man and felt something click inside him. Here was a performer who made it look completely natural, who never seemed to be trying too hard, who carried wit and warmth in equal measure. For the boy from Sherman Oaks who would one day stand in front of cameras himself, Garner was not just entertainment. He was a blueprint. He was living proof that you could be a man of substance on screen without sacrificing your soul to get there. When fate eventually brought the two men together professionally, Selleck admits that he was genuinely nervous in a way that surprised even him. By the time they worked together, Selleck was already a massive star in his own right. He had nothing obvious to be nervous about. And yet, standing in the presence of James Garner, the man he had admired for decades, Selleck felt the full weight of that admiration pressing down on him. He desperately wanted Garner's respect. He wanted the man he had looked up to for so long to look back at him with equal regard. What happened next is something Selleck has described as one of the most quietly transformative experiences of a professional life. Garner walked over, extended his hand, cracked a dry, perfect joke, and immediately made Selleck feel not like a fan meeting an idol, but like a colleague being welcomed by an equal. That single gesture, so simple, so generous, so completely characteristic of the man, told Selleck everything he needed to know about James Garner's character. Over the years that followed, their friendship deepened in a way that only real friendships can, slowly, organically, build on shared laughter, mutual honesty, and a genuine respect that had nothing to do with fame or status. Selleck has been open in his admiration, but now, at 80, he wants to be even more specific about exactly what Garner gave him. The first and perhaps most important lesson was about how to treat people. James Garner was legendary on sets for one particular quality. He treated everyone exactly the same, from the director sitting in the biggest chair to the youngest production assistant running errands at 6 a.m. Garner gave every single person the same warmth, the same courtesy, and the same genuine interest. There was no hierarchy in his world, no pecking order based on credit size or salary. Selleck watched this closely and internalized it deeply. It became his own standard, one he has carried through every project, every set, and every interaction throughout his long career. The second lesson was harder to learn, but arguably more valuable. Garner taught Selleck how to survive fame without being consumed by it. Hollywood has a way of inflating egos to dangerous proportions, and the history of the industry is littered with talented people who mistook their public image for their actual identity. Garner, who had experienced enormous success followed by real professional frustrations, had earned perspective that no acting class could ever teach. He warned Selleck about the seductive dangers of ego, about the way that success can quietly hollow a person out if they're not paying close attention. He urged Selleck to keep his feet on solid ground, to remember where he came from, and to never let any role, any amount of money, or any degree of fame convince him that he was more important than the people around him. These were not abstract pieces of advice handed down from on high. They were the lived wisdom of a man who had walked the same path and come out the other side with his integrity intact. And Selleck listened with everything he had. But it is the personal dimension of Garner's influence that Selleck finds most difficult to put into words, and most important to finally say out loud. James Garner showed Tom Selleck that it was possible to be a great actor and a great man simultaneously. That sounds simple. In Hollywood, it is anything but. Garner's marriage to his wife Lois was one of the great love stories of the entertainment industry. Decades of genuine partnership, through all the chaos and pressure that the business brings, demonstrated to Selleck that choosing family over fame was not a weakness, but a profound kind of strength. When Selleck made a decision to prioritize his own marriage to Jill Mack and to be genuinely present for his daughter Hannah as she grew up on the California ranch, it was a decision informed in no small part by the example James Garner had set. Selleck has described Garner as someone who had a remarkable gift for perspective, for cutting to the noise of whatever crisis seemed overwhelming in the moment and finding the human truth at the center of it. On difficult days, when the weight of a long-running show and the relentless demands of public life felt genuinely crushing, Garner had a way of offering a story or laugh that somehow made everything feel manageable again. He didn't minimize the difficulty. He just had an almost miraculous ability to remind the people around him that they were going to be okay. What Tom Selleck is finally ready to say clearly at 80 years of age is that his friendship with James Garner was not a professional connection that happened to turn personal. It was one of the defining relationships of his life. Full stop. The kind of friendship that changes how you see yourself, how you carry yourself, and who you aspire to be every single day. Garner passed away in July of 2014, and his death left a genuine void in Selleck's life that time has softened but never fully filled. There are things Selleck wishes he had said more explicitly when he had the chance. There are conversations he replays in his mind. There is gratitude that, even now, still searches for somewhere adequate to land. This is why speaking about it now, openly and without reservation, feels so necessary, not as a tribute or a memorial, though it is certainly both of those things, but as an act of honesty, the kind that James Garner himself always modeled, the kind that says, here is the truth, plainly spoken, because the truth is always worth saying. At 80, Tom Selleck sits with the full weight of a remarkable life behind him, the ranch in Hidden Valley, the long and loving marriage, the daughter who found her own passion and pursued it with everything she had, the career that stretched from Hawaii to New York and back again, from Magnum PI to Blue Bloods, from young Hollywood hopeful to genuine American institution. It is a life worth celebrating. But when Selleck is asked what he is most proud of, what he hopes people will remember when they think of the man behind all those characters and all those performances, the answer he gives is quietly remarkable. He hopes they see someone who tried to be decent, someone who tried to treat people well, someone who showed up, did the work, kept his word, and loved his family without apology. Those are not the values of a Hollywood star. They are the values of a man. And the man who helped Tom Selleck understand the difference between the two was James Garner. I owe him more than I could ever properly express, Selleck says, his voice carrying the easy weight of absolute sincerity. Jim set a standard for how to act, how to work, how to treat people, how to live. And at 80 years old, I can tell you honestly that I am still reaching for it, still trying every day to be the kind of man he showed me it was possible to be. That is his legacy in my life. And I don't think there is any greater gift one person can give another. Some truths take a lifetime to fully understand, and some debts can never be fully repaid, only honored day after day in the quiet choices of how a man decides to live. For Tom Selleck, that is exactly what he's been doing all along.